Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And today, we're going to talk about running back sleepers that you can get in the late rounds of your fantasy draft that have immediate startable volume, okay? That they immediately have flex volume for your fantasy team with upside on top of that. So you definitely want to check it out. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast, coming at you from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And let me tell you what, man, it is hot here. It is very, very hot. We got a big heat wave happening. We usually get our monsoon rains at this time of year, which really helps cool things off. But let me just say, man, we are not getting it right now. And this weekend, they're saying over 100 degrees in Albuquerque, which means it's going to be close to 100 up here in Santa Fe. And guess what? We're high in the mountains. Most people don't have air conditioning up here because you really don't need it, except for like maybe 2 weeks out of the year when you really could like really use it. But let me tell you, this is going to be a week where you definitely need air conditioning, and I don't have it. I just have to sit under my fan and not move too much. That's the only way to keep cool. But anyway, regardless, we got some things to talk about. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about late round running backs with startable upside. Okay, and so we're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about the big news of the week, man. Patrick Mahomes getting paid. And let me just say, man, he deserves every penny they're giving him. What an astounding first 3 seasons of a career where he didn't play the first season, but, you know, he's the MVP 2 years ago. This year he wins the Super Bowl. This team is just so darn good. The Chiefs are set up, and this is looking like the next dynasty, man. No more Belichick. Now it's going to be Mahomes and no more Brady. But let me just tell you what, man, congratulations to him on getting the big payday. But there's 2 other people that benefit greatly from what happened this past week, and that is Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson, because both these guys, Prescott's on he's on a franchise tag, and they're trying to sign him to a long-term deal, a deal that just keeps getting more expensive the longer they take. Like idiots, they could have signed him at like $30 million last year, but they didn't. They chose not to, and so his price is continuing to go up. And this thing with Mahomes, it just boosts the asking price of all quarterbacks higher. And so Deshaun Watson, he is also approaching his contract year. He's got 2 years left, which means it will probably happen this year. I'm guessing it will, because there's going to be a lot of pressure from Watson to get this done because he doesn't want to play under his rookie contract anymore. But it might not happen until after the season is over. But then, you got Dak Prescott also on the franchise tender. If he goes onto the free market next year, man, guess what? He's going to get $40 million. And whether or not you think that these players deserve this much money, I personally believe that they do. Every quarterback in the NFL benefits off of this, as the price for a starting quarterback in the NFL just went up substantially. So, Mahomes is the benchmark right now. But let me tell you what, in 5 seasons, Mahomes' contract is going to look totally reasonable. That's what's going to happen. So you can book it, and the pay rates are going up, and we'll see how that affects the teams. That's obviously the biggest issue is will they still be able to field a competitive team after paying Mahomes all this money? And that's going to be the interesting thing to see. So that's all I have to say about that. So congratulations to Patrick Mahomes, man. Yeah, good job. Can't wait to see what he does this year. And I'm sure it'll be amazing. So let's talk about running backs. Now, the running back position clears out very quickly on the draft board, okay? Obviously, for fantasy football, the running back is the most important position. It is the highest in-demand position, and because of that, it thins out quickly. I mean, seriously, by the 4th round, you are out of RB1s and RB2s. I mean, really, that's how many get taken in the first 4 rounds of the draft. And so all you have left is you're trying to figure out guys that can be flex value and depth plays. That's really what you're looking for. And what I did was I looked at last year's stats, and I looked at what players ended the season in the RB30 to RB36, low end flex player. What sort of volume did they need to get in order to become fantasy, in order to be a fantasy relevant player, as they were? And what I found was that the amount of volume that a player needs to get in order to get into that realm, it averaged 117 carries and 28 targets. So 145 targets and touches, which is right near what I say. What I say is that really you need about 150 opportunities with the ball in order to be fantasy relevant as a running back. It's not as high for wide receivers. We'll probably do one on wide receivers later. But so that's what you're looking for. You're looking for guys that can get you 150 touches and targets or more. And if you can find those players late in your draft, well, those guys are super valuable. And I've got 3 guys I want to talk to you about. And in my opinion, man, they are all potentially startable assets week 1. So, but even if they're not, where you're taking these players in the draft, these are not going to be your first 3 or 4 running backs. These guys are going to be your 5th, 6th, or 7th running back. So you don't need them to start week 1 to do well. But let me just tell you what, man, all these guys really just, they're all in great situations. And so I'm really up on all these guys. And the fact that you can get them in the 10th to 12th round is just amazing. It's great. And there is a way that you could end up with all 3 of these players on your team. So we'll talk about that too. But the first player is a player going in the 10th round. Okay, he's going at about ADP 118. And I got to say, I was turned on to this by Fantasy Price Check. He's the one who told me about this guy. And that's when I really started paying attention. And let me tell you what, man, Zach Moss, the rookie from Buffalo, is coming into a fantastic situation. I mean, it just couldn't be better. We already know that the Buffalo Bills offense is a good offense, and they're a run-first offense, so they run the ball a ton. And Singletary is not a workhorse. He's not going to be a 3-down back. It's not going to happen. He's not built for that. So they need another guy that's going to be a 1st and 2nd down back. And that's who Zach Moss is. That's the role he's going in. He's basically taken over Frank Gore's role on that offense. Now, Frank Gore last season got 166 carries and 16 targets. That's pretty darn good. That's great volume. Now, obviously Gore is not a fantasy relevant player anymore. He's too old. But to get that kind of volume at his age, is very impressive. 166 carries. Now he didn't do much with it, right? He ended up with 3.6 yards per carry, and he only got 2 touchdowns. But when I think about this, and I'm like, okay, so you've got someone who's very much past his expiration date for NFL running backs, yet he still keeps coming back year after year. I'm amazed at his longevity in this league. But he's obviously not the player he was, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? It's just, you can't do it. He's 37 or something like that. So now we've got a guy coming in who's in, 21 and with, fresh young legs and a bruiser mentality. And I got to tell you, man, right now I'm projecting him to have 144 touches and 27 targets. So he's already, at about 170 opportunities with the ball, which immediately makes he is flex worthy. And could he get more than 2 touchdowns? Yes, he absolutely could get more than 2 touchdowns. And so, the opportunity is there, and I just think that he is a great choice as a 10th round pick. Get this guy in the 10th round, and the fact that you will probably be able to start him starting week 1 is just amazing. So, that's my first name. So definitely put Zach Moss on your target list. And try to get him on your team, because I think he is a great player to pick up at this point in the draft, this late in the draft. Just an immense bargain. Now, my next guy would be available on the next round. Now, he's going a little bit earlier in PPR leagues, but in half-point PPR and standard leagues, you're going to be able to get him at about this point. His ADP right now, 138, and we're talking about Darrell Henderson of the Rams. Now, of course, here's another situation where a larger-than-life player, Todd Gurley, has now exited the team and left a ton of targets and touches with him. And don't forget, Brandon Cooks also left the team. So that's another, high-volume receiver. Those targets have to go somewhere. And I know everybody right now is very big on Cam Akers. And I do like Cam Akers. I have him tagged as a breakout player this year. He is certainly going to be the lead rushing back, but I don't think he's a workhorse. I'm not sure he can develop into that role. And Cam Akers is going at ADP number 59. So like 6 rounds earlier than Darrell Henderson right now. And right now, as far as the projections go, for total volume in this backfield, it's looking like a 50-50 split. Now, Akers will get, more touches, and Henderson, he's going to get more targets. But basically, you're talking about someone who's right now projected with 141 touches and 57 targets. This is Henderson we're talking about. So almost 200 opportunities with the ball on someone who's available in the 11th round. That is astounding, right? That is something that you gotta be like, what was that again? What was that? I mean, it's amazing that you could get someone like that this late. And so because of that, I got to tell you, man, Darrell Henderson is on my target list in just about every draft to grab him in these late rounds. And, I know that Henderson was not impressive last season. And, obviously that's a risk. But here's the thing, man. When we're talking about these players, when you talk about any player that you're picking in the 10th to 15th round, the draft capital you're spending on them is so low that if they don't work out, it doesn't hurt your team. You're never taking Darrell Henderson as your third running back unless you're really bad, right? If you're really bad at drafting, you might, not take your third running back until the 11th round. You don't want to do that, by the way. I've talked about optimal position allocation in fantasy football. And for most leagues, in your standard league setup with the 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex spot, and six bench slots, you only need to get 1 quarterback. You only need to get 1 tight end. And then as far as wide receivers go, you want to count up the number of wide receiver slots you have plus the number of flex slots you have plus 1. So in this sort of a standard layout, you really only need 4 wide receivers. Everyone else should be a running back, okay? And so when we're talking, a typical 15-round draft where you got to take a kicker and a defense, I'm saying you should end up with 7 running backs on your team by the end of the draft. And that should be your target. And Henderson is a great choice as one of these late round guys. As an 11th round player with almost 200 opportunities with the ball, you just can't pass that up. That is so much upside that, if it works out, you're golden. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't really hurt your team at all because you've already taken 5 other running backs before you took Darrell Henderson, So that's what we're talking about here. So don't be afraid of taking these guys. The opportunity is just immense. And obviously we're going to have to wait to see what happens in training camp with all these guys, but the opportunity is there. And the fact that Henderson is already established on this team and has been in the system for a full year, whereas, Cam Akers is coming in fresh and green. I think the advantage this season goes to the established players. There has been a ton of time missed by these new players, these rookies, and also these players that switch teams to get acclimated to the new system, to play with their teammates, to play with the coaches and run routes and all this sort of stuff. These players that are coming in fresh are at a disadvantage this year as to previous seasons. So, to get an established guy like Darrell Henderson, you've got an advantage there. He's already in the system. He already knows it. And he's going to be better this year than what we saw last year. 200 touches and targets, just fantastic. So that's my next guy. Now the next player, again, you can get him in the next round, the 12th round. And this is a guy who I'm very excited about. Again, he's taking over for an aging player, kind of like how Zach Moss is doing that with Frank Gore's role. So Boston Scott is kind of taking over the role for Darren Sproles, who retired this past year. And again, he's another player that was in the NFL way past his expiration date. But if you go back a few years and you saw what Darren Sproles' role was in this offense, he did get a pretty good amount of volume. When you look back at like the 2014 to 2016 time period, which is still for Sproles, it was kind of past his peak. He was on the decline side of his career, but he was still getting about 75 targets and 75 touches a year on that team. And so, you're right there. You're at the 150 threshold that you need for fantasy relevance. And we're talking a young player that is not at his peak yet, that is still rising, whose skills are still rising. And the guy I'm talking about, man, for the Philadelphia Eagles, Boston Scott, who's currently going at ADP number 154, maybe a little earlier, but this is a guy you should probably target in the 12th round because you don't want to get sniped on him. And right now they are projecting him with 124 touches and 44 targets. So we're talking, 170 opportunities with the ball. Again, great opportunity for him to become a fantasy relevant player. And the thing that I really like about it, Doug Peterson, he doesn't utilize a workhorse, right? He always utilizes a committee. But this past year, he got rid of Jordan Howard, and he didn't bring in anybody else to this backfield. So for me, that means it's going to be a timeshare between Sanders and Scott, and they're both going to be really good for fantasy. I really like the Philly offense anyway for this year. But if I had to pick one player that I wanted to get on my team, I think Boston Scott would be my top choice just based on the value from his draft position. It's just, like I said, it is an excellent situation. He's already established on the team in the system. He was great last year when he played. And so, and last year he only had about 90 targets and touches total. So we're talking a big increase in his volume. And I looked last year, Philly ran the ball 454 times last season. Okay, that's a really great high volume rushing offense. And of course, Sanders is not going to be able to do all that, right? Sanders is only going to take, I'm guessing it's about 60% of the share of the rushing share on this offense. 40% is going to be Boston Scott's. And so, like I said, it's just fantastic opportunity. I have a feeling that all these players are going to rise on the draft board as we get closer to the draft season. But when we talk about like how you should be targeting what player positions you should be targeting at what points in the draft, right now I'm basically on line that 4 of your first 6 picks should be running backs. And also get yourself a wide receiver, as good a wide receiver as you can get. I love 4th round wide receivers, and if a good one falls to the 3rd, like Galladay occasionally falls to the 3rd, but even in the 2nd, man, I think Galladay is a great choice if you're picking late in the 2nd round. So you get yourself a Galladay, you get yourself a tight end. I talked about like getting someone like Zach Ertz or Darren Waller, like in the 5th. In the 6th, you can maybe get someone like Kareem Hunt. Get a good player like that. Then the next 3 picks, you'll get 2 more wide receivers and a quarterback. So when you get to round 10, you'd be sitting with 3 wide receivers and 4 running backs, and 4 running backs a quarterback, a tight end, 3 wide receivers, and then you go boom, 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 Moss, Henderson, Scott in 10th, 11th, 12th round. And then in the 13th round, get yourself one more wide receiver, and you can get a decent one. Like Curtis Samuel is actually kind of a favorite of mine this year for wide receivers in the 13th round, just because he offers really nice value at that point. It's a contract year for him. There's some upside. Again, he's an established player on that team, unlike Robbie Anderson. So you end your draft with 7 running backs. You got 3 elite or near elite options. You got 1 mid-round option. Then you got these 3 guys backing them up, providing your team with extra depth. You're going to be in great shape. So, and the other thing I've noticed is that after the 12th round, really there's nothing for running backs. I mean, you don't even want to bother with even taking one of them because it's mostly a lost cause. All the best handcuffs are gone. And there's really just not much there. But I got to say, man, these 3 guys, just amazing volume for this late in the draft. So I'm sure people are going to catch on to this and start moving these guys up the draft board. But for right now, man, those are the guys you need to target in those rounds. And I think I'm going to do a mock draft, and we're going to try to get all 3 of them. I love that if you can pull the trifecta. It's usually next to impossible to do because you always get sniped. But man, if you can swing it, that'd be awesome. And they're far enough apart in their ADPs that you could do it. I mean, Zach Moss is at 118, Henderson's at 138, Boston Scott's at 154. So there's enough gap between them that you can pretty easily get all 3 if you focus on it for those rounds. So anyway, so that's it. So that is the show for today. Like I said, I'm really excited about these guys. And when you're looking at projections, man, what you want to look at is volume and get the guys, find guys that have at least 150 touches and targets for running backs, because those are the guys that are most likely going to become fantasy relevant during the course of your fantasy season. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you think about these guys, or if there's any other late round guys that you are interested in and want to get my opinion on or whatever. I'd love to talk with you about it and see where you're at. So leave comments down below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'm super excited about the football season this year. Really hoping for a great football season. It would just be nice to have that back. So thank you very much for watching. We will be back again on Saturday. I will probably do another mock draft, but we might talk about like the flex-worthy wide receivers that are available late as well. So you have that list as well. So I haven't decided yet, but stay tuned. All right. So thank you very much for watching once again. Have yourself a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.